Hi, this is meteorologist Ted Keller. Probably the biggest news is that the heat is shifting more to the east this weekend in an area that had received about a week and a half of very cool autumnal like air. Remember that video I had a couple of weeks ago that said fake fall? There you go. Let's talk more about it. So here we have the EPS 500 millibar flow. This is starting next week and going through the week after that. So it starts on Monday and goes for the next 7 days. So we show this to you because the overall 500 millibar flow, which is about halfway up in the troposphere, which is where all the weather occurs, is a good starting point to see the general trends of things. So whenever you see and the winds at this level are flowing roughly between these lines. Okay, so when you have something that dips down like this, it's called a trough of low pressure. When it rises like this, it's called a ridge. So we have two ridges and a trough, basically. And then the center of the ridge is this high pressure dome over Mexico. So when it rises up, it's a ridge, and generally speaking, it's warm underneath these features, and at least normal or cooler in this case below the trough. And the colors indicate whether this is deviating significantly from what you would expect for that week in September. So you're seeing that these lines are more to the north and are also bending more to the north, like ridges, more so than they might normally be expected to do. So that basically indicates that it's a warm pattern. The hottest air is going to be underneath here. Let's take a look at the same time period, but now we'll take a look at the temperature at the surface and its anomaly, or how far off is it from what's considered normal. So the Midwest, the Great Lakes, some of the plains are in this bubble of hot air here. So that's to be expected. We also have this cool patch behind. Remember, there was a trough of low pressure right here. There's this kind of a cool patch in here. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and parts of interior California and almost all of Canada will be a little bit above the normal for all of next week into the following weekend. So, what about this weekend? So, Saturday, we can definitely see mid 90s, even hints of upper 90s. And we got a St. Louis 98-degree forecast for Saturday, 95 in my town here in Springfield, 90, mid 90s common from southern Minnesota straight down into Arkansas. The colors indicate how far above or below normal this is. So, when you see these really dark reds and even some purples, that's way above what's expected this time of year. Meanwhile, the cool air is evident too, where you see Grand Junction at 73, and this is all a part of a bubble of abnormally cool air on Saturday. So as we trend now to Monday, it stays hot, and by implication on Sunday, nothing's going to change. So still hot there. On Monday, it just shifts more to the north and even more to the east. And the Northwest, which was hot for many weeks in a row, is now enjoying some very cool air. And then going into 2 days later after that, Wednesday of next week, again, not a whole lot changes. Same states, same general temperature pattern, perhaps not quite as departed from normal, but still a lot of those darker reds indicating cooler air, and still in the Rockies a little bit cool. Now, speaking of that, beginning next week, now keep in mind there are mountain ranges here, so these temperatures are not, there are no major cities being forecast up in the mountains, but if you take a look at frost and freeze hazards for the 15th through the 17th, so starting early next week, you actually have some Yellowstone and much of western Wyoming and the high desert, parts of the high desert here in Colorado, and also the Rocky Mountain areas are under these advisories for much of next week. Having said that, though, if we look at the 6 to 10 day temperature pattern, Thursday through Monday of next week, it still is remaining very warm. In fact, a pretty high confidence level around Memphis that it's going to be very much above normal. And the whole country for that basically, week period almost is going to be on the warm side for sure. 3, 2, 1. Take a look at the visible satellite loop. Take a look at some other features too. Florida, for one, is still continuing to see a stream of clouds, thunderstorms developing. We'll talk more about their heavy rain potential. Basically, all the cool fronts that made it down across the central U.S. the last couple of weeks have all stalled here eventually. So it's helping to really kind of ignite showers and storms there. Much of the country is still pretty quiet. You see a blow up of thunderstorms in a couple of places here in Minnesota, and pretty clear, pretty evident here from New Mexico straight up to the through the Rockies and into the eastern side of the Rockies here this afternoon. Take a look at the 500 millibar flow, and no surprise, where the temperatures are at their hottest, that's where the high ridge of high pressure is located. Remember that we were talking about that a few slides ago? Trough of low pressure here on the east coast. Not only is that providing slightly cooler air there, but it's also kind of encouraging moisture to kind of flow up from the Gulf and from the Caribbean into this area, kind of fueling those thunderstorms in portions of Florida. Meanwhile, this is a pretty sharp trough for this time of year, and that's why when this gets over the center of the Rockies early next week, that's where the cool air is going to be at those higher elevations. But you're seeing some showers and thunderstorms form there ahead of that trough, and that's a pretty common feature to see as well. Some of your heavier rains are typically going to fall on the eastern side of troughs, so there and right there. Take a look at the surface map here. Warm front in Iowa and Illinois moving north. And for this time of year, that's not a bad low pressure area right there, centered over South Dakota. The ridge of high pressure at the surface is centered over northern Arkansas. And you can see all these temperature contrasts very clearly if we just take a look at readings. Again, where the ridge is, everything's hot. 94 in Springfield, 97 in Shreveport. Meanwhile, on the backside of this trough where surface high pressure exists, cooler temperatures there. We'll take a closer look at those in a minute. And again, the trough of low pressure is causing temperatures to be cool right behind it. And of course, there's an elevation factor there as well. We'll do a look at the station model. One of the first things you learn in meteorology school is how to write one of these. So you basically take a look at a city, the temperatures in the upper left-hand corner, the dew points in the bottom left-hand corner, the sky conditions, the center circle, and the wind is coming out of the direction like this. So you just put an arrow at the end of that bar, at the end of that line, and that gives you wind direction. So high pressure and control of the northeast, so many of the winds are light. So if you only see like a half barb off there, that's less than 10 miles per hour. Meanwhile, ahead of that trough, New York City is seeing about a 12 mile per hour wind there. But all these readings are very cool. It's not until you start getting over to around St. Louis, Cape Girardeau, Evansville area that you start getting those 90s start to show up. Let's take a look at any heavy rain potential there is. Well, on the advisory side, the only flood watches that are in effect are, again, the high desert of Colorado, basically this western and southwestern corner, a little bit of sliver of Utah, and much of northern New Mexico. If you take a look at the quantitative precipitation forecast, this is for the next 7 days. I have to go out that far because there really isn't a whole lot of heavy rain showing up, but it does show up in the Dakotas. And even though there's a watch in effect for Colorado, I'm not seeing the same sort of indicator on the map. So it's kind of a curiosity to me why that exists. Maybe a flash flood watch would be more appropriate because of maybe some thunderstorm rains, but widespread rains are just not expected there, which is what I kind of thought a flood watch was. Anyway, and there's also some heavy rains south half of Florida, especially the southern tip of Florida. Let's take a look at the area up here to the north in the Dakotas, where we're seeing 2 to 3 inch totals right in this area here, maybe something approaching 4 inches in South Dakota. And yes, Florida, South Florida, from the 17th through the 19th is still forecast to be in a heavy rain hazard area here. And if we look at the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, that same state is highlighted. That starts Thursday of next week. And much of the northern plains, and especially Southern California and parts of New Mexico, have a pretty high confidence of having some above normal precipitation for that time period. On the severe weather side of things, these outlooks are actually kind of perked up a little bit. They really haven't been all that interesting the last couple of weeks, but we do have a level 2 out of 5 in 2 areas there. That area out ahead of the trough in 2 areas there and there. And that kind of coincides with the flood watch area. It's kind of interesting there. So some of those thunderstorms could be severe in southwest, western Colorado, small slivers of the surrounding Four Corner states there, and then North and South Dakota. We'll take a look at a current radar. And a current radar, this was recorded right before about 5. That radar was recorded about 5:30 Central Daylight Time. So it does overlay warnings. So there was a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for that cluster of storms there. A handful, very small activity really. So not a lot of widespread rain, but I think some of these individual storms could produce flash flooding in some of those areas of Colorado. Let's just take it ahead here on the severe weather front. Chicago, marginal risk on Saturday. Basically the upper plains in eastern Colorado and New Mexico, and then the Dakotas again, and going more into the weekend, this kind of shifts with that trough eastward just a little bit. Again, not real high chances, marginal risks in these areas, maybe some hail and high winds. I didn't see any significant tornado risks at all, and haven't for a while. Well, we'll just look at the tropics real quick. There is a 40 to 60% chance of tropical storm development from something coming off the coast of Africa right now. This would be well out into the future here. Here's Puerto Rico right here, the islands out to the southeast of there, and the Windward Islands. And so this would be days and days and days away. And even by the shape of this is kind of indicating that toward the end of anything that develops life will probably start curving back out to sea. Just to refresh, we've had all these used so far, with Gabrielle next on the list, with slim chances here over the next couple of days of anything forming. Still in a hurricane season forecast at a 50-50 chance of being above normal. With we have had 6 named storms so far. They're forecasting still 13 to 18 and only 1 hurricane, and that was actually a major hurricane as well. And we just passed the statistical peak of hurricane season. Statistics, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? But so anyway, there's the Atlantic activity. Just because it peaks here doesn't mean we can't have an active end of October or end of September, early October. In fact, you can point to some pretty major hurricanes that have occurred in early October, and the sea surface temperatures are still pretty warm. So one thing, though, as you get later into the season is the wind shear starts increasing by the United States especially, and even over parts of the Atlantic. So that starts cutting down. They need weak wind shear, these types of storms, to really start to develop. And in the month of September, last graph here, the highest frequency of named storms per 100 years, certainly in this dark red. So while it's true that most of these storms do actually form and curve back out to sea, obviously enough of them don't. So you look at these coastal areas here, you start seeing more development in the Gulf of Mexico. Haven't seen any signs of that yet, but those waters are pretty warm. So that's certainly something we'll watch over the next month or maybe beyond. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.